Good evening. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Melissa Ridgen. We begin tonight in the British Columbia interior, where a long-running dispute between opponents of a liquid natural gas pipeline and the pipeline company led to several arrests yesterday. Coastal GasLink plans to run their product from northern BC to the west coast and then onto the lucrative market in Asia. One of the 14 people that was arrested at the Githamden checkpoint last night was Nicole.
Be released from custody.
She is 72 years old and has lived on Wet'suwet'en territory for 45 years. She was arrested and taken to the nearby town of Houston and then released. The other protesters were taken to Prince George, BC. Here's what she had to say about how she felt when she saw the RCMP overtake the gate.
I was upset and scared for other people when the police overtook 2 or 3 of the people who were at the front line, but I wasn't afraid because I knew what we were doing was right, and whatever would come of it, we would just have to endure. Some people were yelling things to the police like, you know, this is not right, stop what you're doing, and the only phrase I could think of, but I didn't think they'd hear it, I was too far back, is, this is not what I call reconciliation. And that's it in a nutshell. Don't ever utter that word again if you're not prepared to do what's right and bring justice to the Wet'suwet'en people.
To be clear, there are 2 points where people opposed to the LNG gas pipeline have set up camp to stop the project. The main one is a gate set up on a bridge crossing the Maurice River some 10 years ago. This one has become to be called the Unistoten camp. The Coastal GasLink company obtained a court order to remove that gate last month. In response to the court order, members of the Gitmitten clan set up a checkpoint 17 kilometers away in support of the Unistoten camp. Coastal GasLink went back to court to have the injunction amended to include both camps. Yesterday afternoon, the RCMP made their move on the Gitmitten checkpoint.
There was like tactical was there. There was, I assume, more like intervention officers. There seemed to be a medical team. That's correct.
There was, like I said, support services brought in, which included and certainly not limited to the emergency response team, a tactical team, forensic identification section was in, and we did have our air support, as well as general duty members brought in to assist in this enforcement.
We don't know right now how many anti-pipeline people were at the checkpoint, but what we do know is that 14 people were arrested, including spokeswoman Molly Wickham. Namoks, one of the hereditary chiefs of the Saiu clan.
But with Coastal GasLink, just the arrogance of him coming in with already a mindset of this is happening regardless of what we say was totally inappropriate, as they are guests on our territory, and this is considered trespass in our law.
That was yesterday. As we go to air today, the gate on the bridge over the Maurice River leading to the Unistoten camp is still up. It's up to the RCMP now to try to enforce that court order, which would open up the bridge to allow Coastal GasLink employees into the area where the planned pipeline would go. We are not being told how opening up the bridge will be done, how many police are involved, or how many Unistoten people and their supporters are going to resist the police action. Only people on the RCMP list and hereditary chiefs are allowed past the RCMP roadblock. Today, police were unloading and moving supplies in, and some say it looked like they're getting ready for a long haul. RCMP choppers now park at the roadblock. They take off and come back about 20 minutes later. Things were reportedly quiet at the camp, but people remained nervous. Coastal GasLink's white pickup trucks were also seen coming in and out. People at the camp were anxiously waiting to hear anything from the Unistoten checkpoint and from their loved ones. They were keeping warm by a fire. They were praying, and they built a shelter, and it appears they too look to be settling in for the long haul. We spoke with 2 of the people at the Maurice Forest Service Road. Art Wilson is a hereditary chief whose son is behind the lines at the Unistoten camp.
It's just another chapter of the treatment of Native people. Like historically, the structures of government have suppressed us like this, and I think, I could tell you the whole story of the Eastern experience 200 or 300 years ago, and not too much has changed since. So anything that that any extraction of resources, we're going to have a problem, because they want what's ours. So if they can't have, this is what they do behind me here. So
we're here to witness, because this is history that's happening right now. Another 10 years from now, another 20, 30, 40 years, you know, the next generation is probably going to have to do the exact same thing to protect our lands. You know, like this is us. Like us as Indigenous people, our past is our future. And lately, in the last probably 70, 80 years, it's been trauma, intergenerational trauma. And it's still happening today when they're coming down from the Gidimt'en checkpoint, they experience trauma. And that's why we're here for them, just to show our support and our love and everything for them. So I'm quite worried about what's going to happen up there. I don't know what's going to happen. I can't predict what's going to happen. So we're just hoping that it's going to be peaceful and that nobody gets hurt like they did yesterday. You know, it's just unnecessary force.
A few hundred people rallied in Ottawa voicing their concerns of the actions of the RCMP yesterday. They started on Parliament Hill and they moved through the streets of the capital and ended up at a government building where the Prime Minister was supposed to give a speech. Here's Annette Francis with more.
As a show of solidarity, the supporters gathered on the steps of Parliament.
Something has to be done about the injustices we see in the world, in this country, in other people's territories.
They came with signs, banners, and hand drums. Arif Jinya is the organizer of today's rally. He says it all came together quickly.
It was like lighting a match, and the fire is already there. And the momentum for 55 events across the country and internationally, 55 plus, are being organized in solidarity with what's what right now, because that's such a significant struggle right now. There's been 14 arrests. The RCMP has basically invaded Indigenous territory.
Following a few speeches, they headed through the streets of Ottawa. MDP MP Romeo Saganash says he was saddened by the events on the Wet'suwet'en territory.
I'm pretty concerned and preoccupied by what's going on, especially in 2019, in a supposedly era of reconciliation. Just these kind of things are not supposed to happen. I'm here because I stand in solidarity with the Wet'suwet'en. I stand in solidarity for human rights as well. That's my obligation, that's my duty as a parliamentarian, to stand up for human rights in this country.
Ottawa resident Adrian Murray says he came out just to show his support.
I'm out here because I think that the struggle of the Wet'suwet'en people is very, very important. Not only is it a struggle over pipelines and a struggle for the environment and for the future of all Canadians' sort of livelihoods and life, but it's also a struggle between different ways of living into the future and whether we respect Indigenous people's rights to their land in Canada, and I think that's very important.
The crowd forced its way into a government building where Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was meeting with the First Nations Forum. Their presence delayed his speech. Following a brief sit-in with songs, the rally ended. Many say they'll continue to follow and support the Wet'suwet'en. Annette Francis, APTN National News, Ottawa.
It's time for us to take a quick break, but we've got lots more news to come, so please stay with us. On the East Coast, we have 2 in snow in Fredericton, 3s for Charlottetown, 5 for Halifax, minus 16 in snow in Inukjuak, Kuujjuaq minus 13 in snow, minus 6 in snow in Chibougamau, Val-d'Or minus 7 in snow, Montreal snow and 0, minus 4 in snow in North Bay, minus 3 in snow in Peterborough, 0s for Toronto, minus 21 in Big Trout Lake, minus 9 in Kapuskasing and Timmins, minus 27 in Clear and Churchill, minus 22 in Pucktawagan and sunshine there. Minus 16s for Barons River and Princess Harbor and cloud there. Minus 17 in Clear in Winnipeg. -7 in snow in Swift Current, -13 in snow in Saskatoon. -24 and sunny in Uranium City, -22 and sunny in Stony Rapids, and -17 with some snow in La Ronge. Welcome back. The trial for two men accused of killing Janine Fontaine continued in Winnipeg today. Fontaine's brother was the first to testify. He described in detail the moments leading up to what the Crown is calling a botched robbery resulting in her death. Brittany Hobson brings us more.
Vincent Fontaine testified the morning his sister Janine was shot and killed began like any other morning. He was hanging out in the North End home Janine shared with their mother when he heard a knock at the door. When he answered, he found three men who were looking for Janine's boyfriend, who wasn't in the home at the time. Vincent let them in. He says one man began searching the home for Janine's boyfriend, a second man stood at the door, and a third man went into Janine's bedroom, started talking to her. Shortly after the men arrived, two of Janine's friends came through the back door. This is when chaos ensued, according to the Crown. The man looking for Janine's boyfriend entered the kitchen and saw the two friends. He was holding a gun. The friends became spooked and left immediately. Then Vincent said he saw the front door open and heard a shot. Sometime after that, Vincent says he came into the kitchen and saw the man who was looking for Janine's boyfriend and holding the gun, putting papers on the stovetop. When he asked him what he was doing, he says the man pointed the gun at him and told him to leave. Vincent fled the house shortly after. Jason Mayer and Christopher Brass are on trial for manslaughter. Both have pleaded not guilty. During testimony, Vincent did not identify Mayer or Brass as two of the men who were in the home on March 14, 2017. He also said he was unable to identify who fired the gun or where it was fired from. In opening statements, Crown prosecutors argued Janine was shot and killed during a botched robbery. They say Mayer's girlfriend directed him to go to Janine's home to collect a drug payment from her boyfriend. The boyfriend is set to testify on Wednesday. Brittany Hobson, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Carol Golden Eagle is an artist and a storyteller. She was also a broadcaster, APTN National News' first host. But she's also a survivor of the 60s scoop and grew up with an adopted family in a small town, Saskatchewan. She joins us now to give us her thoughts on yesterday's apology by Saskatchewan's Premier. So what did you think of Premier Scott Moe's apology yesterday?
Well, like many people, I'm just happy that it happened. It's way past due to say, I am so sorry, this never should have happened. And please, let's just move forward from here. And one thing that is bothering me, I've noticed all over social media, is all those people who are naysayers and are criticizing the apology. I don't understand that. We need to start somewhere in terms of moving together as friends and neighbors and colleagues. And this is the start of that.
So what more could people in Saskatchewan do, I guess, for scoop survivors from this point forward?
I think what we need to do is start talking. I mean, there were consultations going into the wording of the apology and things that were important to be said and things that are important to acknowledge, like there was so much taken from people like myself who was scooped up and the tens of thousands of others. Things we will never get back, but in some way figure out ways to heal our hearts and find each other, because a lot, one of the worst things about the scoop up is we were alone. We were growing up in these white communities. We didn't know a thing about our families and our languages, which are so beautiful. And we need to find our way back to each other and to our communities and our culture and take what is rightfully ours. And that's what we need to find a way to do together. And I think that's an individual thing, by the way. The reason I say that is because 2019 is the International Year of Indigenous Languages. My family, my biological family, is fluently Cree. And I've been saying for years now that I want to be at least proficient in the language when I go visit them up north. This is the year I'm doing it. So that's my way of saying I am reclaiming.
So, and you explore this issue in your novel Bearskin Diary and other books too. Is that part of your healing, your journey?
It is. In fact, as a journalist, as you know, I was a journalist before I went into the arts. Yes, at APTN, I loved it there. I was so sad to leave, but anyway, I raised my family. So yeah, what happened when I was working as a journalist was when all of the stories of residential school were coming out and people were talking about that, I was doing documentaries and I was thinking, you know what? The stories of the residential school survivors are so important, but no one even knows about the scoop up. And so that is one of the reasons I wrote it, just to bring awareness to a greater audience, to Canadians, that yes, this terrible dark part of Canadian history happened. And for me, it was actually, I worked through a lot of things that I had buried and wanted to forget because they were so painful. And so in that way, you said, what can scoop survivors do now? We also need to find ways to heal our hearts, because writing Bearskin Diary, writing the poetry that I wrote in her life, where there were so many dark moments that I talked about. And I know that anyone who went through the scoop up knows what I'm talking about, because there are similarities with all of our stories. And yeah, that was my way of finally admitting the truth to myself, that I have some work to do in terms of healing my heart and moving forward. And how I'm going to do that this year, in addition to language, is I am going to dance more because I love the powwow. I'm going to sing more with my drum. I'm going to smile more and basically just really rejoice in the fact that we came through this time and now we have the opportunity to move forward in a better direction, but with the blessing of everyone else, not just people in our own communities. I'm really happy Canadians are.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's now a topic, just like residential schools are. I'm happy to hear that this apology meant something to you and that you've got a plan to move forward, and we look forward to hearing back from you about how that journey is going for you. Thanks so much for taking time to join us over here at APTN again.
All right, you guys are awesome. Mwah, miss you so much.
Thanks, Carol. It is time for another quick break, but first here's the rest of tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting off in northern Alberta, we have -23 in Fort Chip and high level, clear skies there. -11 in snow in Red Deer, 4s for Lethbridge and Medicine Hat, sunny skies. 8 and rain in Victoria and Vancouver, -1 and snow in Bella Coola. -20 and snow in Dace Lake, -6 and snow in Smithers. -35 and clear in Beaver Creek and Dawson City, -29 in Watson Lake. -31 and clear in Norman Wells, -24 in Trout Lake. -30 and clear in Paulatuck and Sax Harbor and Colville Lake. -33 and clear in Cambridge Bay, -28 in Repulse Bay and clear skies. -28 for Pangertown and Clyde River, and -26 and snow in Iqaluit. Welcome back. There were rallies across the country today in support of the Wet'suwet'en camps. Starting in Montreal, the rally focused on Justin Trudeau's riding before spontaneously turning into something else. Here's Tom Fenario.
No trespass, no consent. At first glance, this might not seem like an obvious location for a Montreal protest. But this nondescript building, just off a major highway, happens to hold the constituency office of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. And the approximate 150 people here want him to know yesterday's arrest of 14 people on Wet'suwet'en territory is unacceptable.
It was sad to see because we had Molly Wickham live on Facebook with us. And then her image went dead for a while. It went a while, so we knew what was going, where Molly was. When I saw an image of her face down on the snow, it was very tearful.
A Wet'suwet'en Frog Clan member, Marlene Hale, has been living in Montreal since 2012. She took time off of work to speak at this rally in solidarity for her people.
Indigenous people put their bodies on the line all the time, every day, to defend the lives of their people and their grandchildren, and settlers need to be doing the same thing, and we're here to fight for the land. If there's no land, there's no people.
A little before noon, the rally morphed into a street protest. A busy three-lane boulevard that serves as an access road to a major highway was blocked for about 20 minutes. No arrests were made. For her part, Marlene Hale intends to keep showing her support.
Especially when I see it's my elders, my chiefs, and my family, and my cousins. And I don't feel helpless. I still am doing what I can, how I can, to pass the message on.
It looks as if Hale won't have to do it on her own. Tom Fenario, APTN National News, Montreal.
And to Thunder Bay, more rallies in support of the hereditary chiefs in Wet'suwet'en. A couple dozen people showed up to rally at Minister Patty Haju's constituency office during the noon hour today, with the message that the RCMP action taken on the people and land of Wet'suwet'en territory was, quote, unacceptable and illegal. And to Calgary, 2 rallies were held outside the Trans-Canada GasLink headquarters. About 50 people took part in a peaceful protest in solidarity with the camps, but there was also a pro-pipeline counter-protest, which also had about 50 people. Indigenous groups here say they aren't rallying against pipelines, they are rallying against violence.
I think that a lot of Indigenous people are pro-pipeline, but I think that there's not room for us to have our voice here because a lot of racism has come from these type of protests, and they haven't made space for Indigenous people at all. They have an assumption that we are all anti-pipeline when some of us are pro-pipeline, but we are all anti-violence, and I would really think that Canadians would get behind that message.
And to the north, groups in Yellowknife gathered this afternoon to support Wet'suwet'en Nation against the pipeline construction on their unceded territory. About 30 people rallied in Sombuquet, Denende. Supporters held up signs, they did a smudge, and spoke in solidarity of those in Unistoten. Signs criticizing the events happening on this unceded territory were then taped to the Northwest Territories MP's office. And in Vancouver, hundreds took to the streets in support of the 2 camps. The rally started outside the BC Supreme Court. The crowd then marched through downtown Vancouver, drumming and singing traditional songs. They say they are standing in solidarity with those on the front lines, and they have a message for Prime Minister Justin Trudeau.
Mother Earth is at the crossroads here with the predations of the fossil fuel and the extraction industries, and history is calling upon all of us. I want to say to Prime Minister Trudeau, welcome to Battleground, British Columbia.
That's all the news we have for you tonight. We will, of course, continue to monitor the Wet'suwet'en situation, and it's important to note that not all First Nations along the 670-kilometer pipeline route oppose it. We hope to bring you more on that perspective tomorrow. I'm Melissa Ridgen. Have a great night.